Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on understanding commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of children. I'm your host, Esther Anna Sam, and I manage communications for the Movement India. We're a volunteer mobilization nonprofit that brings ordinary citizens from colleges and corporates together to serve in the areas of anti-human trafficking, mental health, and education for vulnerable children. Today, our panel discussion is actually just one of a whole host of events that are happening throughout this week as part of Child Safety Week. As all of you know, Child Rights Week in India is bookended by yesterday, which was National Children's Day, and November 20th, which is International Children's Day, and November 19th, the World Day for Prevention of Child Abuse, also falls within this week. So throughout this week, we are just one among 10 organizations, two others of whom are here at this panel. What we're doing is we're raising our collective voices to end commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of children. So there's this Facebook Live panel discussion, there's an Instagram Live, there are Twitter chats. All of us are putting out content every day of this week to bring about conceptual clarity about this issue, as well as to talk about how can we prevent this? How can we as ordinary people, citizens of this beautiful nation, actually do something about ending this issue? So before we get started, I'm just going to give you a little brief about why we're even talking about commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of children, okay? So let's look at this at the global scale. The ILO, or the International Labour Organization, says that over 40 million people are victims or survivors of human trafficking today. This is the largest ever in history. And what is the most heartbreaking part of this statistic is that 1 in 4 victims is a child. So let's actually come home a little closer. And just recently, the National Crime Record Bureau released its data for 2020. And of the over 6,600 human trafficking cases, a majority were of sex trafficking, including many of children. So this is definitely an issue that each of us should care about, should know about, and can be involved in the prevention of. So today I have the honor of hosting this panel discussion, and I have with me some amazing people, leading anti-human trafficking experts from different parts of the country. And before we dive straight in, I just want to quickly introduce you. So first, let me introduce Ms. Leena Kejriwal, founder of Missing Link Trust. Leena is a photographer and installation artist based in Mumbai and Kolkata, but she's joining us from outside the country right now. She founded Missing Link Trust in 2015 to raise awareness to prevent sex trafficking in India. Missing works in the intersection of art and education, and I'm sure if you've been online long enough, you've seen a lot of their material out there. They have this excellent game called Game for a Cause. It's internationally known and it's been downloaded over 1 million times. Missing has reached over 130,000 people with its awareness programs. And this year, it's going from school to school to raise awareness as part of its Missing Awareness and Safety School program. Leena, ma'am, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate you making your time for this. Our second panelist for the evening, thank you so much, ma'am, is Ms. Sudha Upadhyayula. Sudha has over 20 years of project management experience ranging across corporate and social sector organizations. She's currently the head of operations and HR at My Choices Foundation. My Choices Foundation works towards an India that is safe, peaceful, and flourishing for women. Isn't that an India we'd all like to see? They have two arms. Through their Operation Peacemaker, they tackle the issue of domestic violence. And through their Operation Red Alert, they address human trafficking. Operation Red Alert is today nationally known for its Safe Village program, which is a grassroots initiative that raises awareness in rural India through innovative tools like comic books, a national helpline, radio broadcasts, and so much more. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Sudha ma'am, and we really look forward to hearing your thoughts this evening. Our third panelist, thank you, ma'am. Our third panelist for the evening is Ms. Rosanna Lindo. She's director of Impulse NGO Network. She's been part of Impulse right from their early days, and currently she leads the organization's training section. During her illustrious career, she's worked on a whole range of projects supported by the UNODC, UNICEF, UNIFEM, NACO, you name it, combating a whole range of issues from child trafficking to HIV and AIDS awareness, adolescent health, and much more. Many of you would know Impulse for its work in cross-border human trafficking. They work in 8 different states in the northeast of India, and they're globally recognized for their 12-pillar model featuring the 6 Ps: partnership, prevention, protection, policing, press, and prosecution, and the 6 Rs: reporting, rescue, rehabilitation, repatriation, reintegration, and restitution. I'm going to give myself an award for finishing that sentence. But as you can clearly see, we are surrounded by some amazing people in this field doing amazing work as organizations across the country. And I'm going to stop my jabber right here and hand it over to them because they're the ones you need to hear from this evening. Rosanna ma'am, if I can start with you. The first section of this conversation for the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about how the pandemic has actually affected this field of commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of children. Your organization works in 8 states in the Northeast. What are you seeing on the ground? What has actually changed in the last 1.5 years?
What we have seen is during the pandemic, most of the cases that we have received with regard to children and young girls being trafficked for marriage from Assam and from West Bengal. So, in some of the cases which we have seen, women are mostly has been trafficked. So social media plays a very important role in part of platform for traffickers to lure young girls, as well, who often fall prey to these traffickers because they just lure them and make them fall in love with them, and then they just lure them. So these are the things that is happening right now on ground, and they are most likely taken to North India and with false promise of marriages and are sold off for prostitution. So this is one thing which we have seen. So basically, perpetrators like traffickers, befriend these young girls and trap them by promising them good life, good, it's all about false promises. In some cases, family members and relatives are also involved in it, knowingly or unknowingly, because during the pandemic, a lot of them have lost their jobs and all. So, even family members do send their girls to work outside. So this is one thing which is there. So, and in recent cases, one of the cases that we have seen in Assam is that, there are women who have been trafficked themselves before in other states. They come back and they lure girls from here and take them for marriage to other states. So this is one thing which we have seen. So it's very important for organizations working towards combating human trafficking to create awareness through different social media platforms, because the traffickers are usually using social media platforms to lure girls. That's what it is.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosanna ma'am, for sharing. And I'm sure this trend has gotten even more amplified with the mass digitization that has happened in the last 1.5 years. Everybody is more online than ever before, and it makes sense that the trafficker is now online as well. Sudha ma'am, your organization runs a national helpline for trafficking, but I understand that you get calls for a whole host of other violence and women-related issues as well. What are some of the trends that you're seeing on the ground?
Like Rosanna said, we're also increasingly seeing instances of child marriage. Especially, I want to narrate an incident in West Bengal when we had been there for a program. One standard, when we were talking to a group of 9th standard students, we saw that 17 children got married after COVID in the past 3 months. So that's the magnitude of the issue that is happening. And another thing that we have also noted when we speak to other stakeholders, that almost all trafficking cases now have online component in them. That is the first instance, the first meeting of the trafficker is online with the victim, either through the Facebook or through the WhatsApp. They get the numbers randomly through the friends or someone else. Yeah, that is happening. And same is the case with our helpline too. We're getting lot many. There has been an increase of 400% in online child exploitation because during this pandemic in 2020. And the reason for this is the children are closeted in their families. They lack the support system of education. And the midday meal scheme of the government has really been helpful. The children had the source of one perfect meal that is now not available to them. And they're closeted also with the exploiters in their own home. So these are the challenges. And the victims of trafficking are not able to seek support from the regular support system that was earlier available. The police system also got diverted to handle other aspects of COVID. So multiple issues are happening.
Right. Again, a repeat in the strong use of online medium for recruiting and for building connection. Leena ma'am, I want to hand it over to you. Sudha ma'am was just referring that there was a 400% increase in cybercrime cases where children compared to pre-pandemic. And there was also another report that said India has probably the highest instances of child pornographic material that's there online. It wasn't throughout the pandemic. I think this was calculated in the early days of the pandemic, but there's definitely a sharp rise in pornographic material. Since your organization does so much digital awareness work and you're very present online, what are you seeing from your operations?
Definitely. I mean, other than trafficking being rooted digitally, I think the next big thing, which is really, I think, has to jolt the world, is the rise in child sexual abuse material, which is coming online. So out here today, like I'll just read some stats for you. We have the NECMEC, the NCMEC, the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. They have said that there has been 106% rise of child sexual abuse material online. In April 2020, NCRB reported 95% increase of online child porn traffic. And all this, of course, through use of your online messaging services and media services. And CSAM, we all are knowing, is like something which is now the next scary thing. So we have actually been working, like you already told everybody, we're working on a whole school program. So we've had cybersecurity experts who are on our panel and advising us. They get really huge links from Interpol, which each state actually apparently gets Interpol kind of telling them of things, which to look out for. The Kerala state took up one of their the red alerts they got, and they were able to nab at one go. They reached, they had a blanket kind of a raid, and of which one more horrific thing I want to tell everybody: 65% of the perpetrators were underage. That, I think, is something which we have to wake up to. Like, we are seeing an increase in child sexual abuse material, but also the abusers are also really young. Both these angles. This is the kind of world which is shaping up. And that's why it's becoming really important to address this beyond trafficking, beyond predators online, beyond all that. I think that's another big angle which we have to be really keeping our eyes open for. And we're putting all our learnings in, and awareness and education is becoming really important for that. So that's a different thing which I know you'll come later. But have I answered your question exactly?
Yes, you have.
This?
Yes, you have. I just want to quickly, this is open to any of you. The trends that you're seeing of rising use of online medium, it is not just an urban thing, right? It's happening both in villages as well as both urban tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. Is that true?
Yes, of course.
Sure.
We had an instance reported of children as young as 3 and 4 being exploited in the rural areas of Jharkhand. And they are exploited online. I mean, they're made to perform different acts in front of the camera for various international audiences also. So the clientele grew. It's global now because of the internet also. Yeah, and as Leena mentioned, yes, it is sad that even perpetrators are now young children. That means we have to wake up, and if we want to decrease the instances next generation, we have to create awareness amongst them.
Yeah. There's kind of like a ongoing statement that says human trafficking is the invisible crime because like it's happening in front of your eyes, but people can't recognize it. But I think the internet has just made it so much more invisible because people think they're safe behind their phone. But and that has led to an exponential rise in the scale of the kind of material that's being put out there. And it is heartbreaking. But to those of you who are listening, the rest of this conversation is not going to be as heartbreaking because we're going to talk about solutions. We're going to talk about what can each of us do. But before we get to that, I just want to move to the second section of this conversation to talk about why are children specifically vulnerable to this? Why are they actually the most vulnerable to sexual exploitation and trafficking? Leena ma'am, you can go ahead with this.
Yeah, because I just feel it's a little continuation to what I've just mentioned.
Sure.
Because we are talking about beyond trafficking, it's child sexual abuse. And like Sudha just mentioned, she just said there was a 2 or a 4-year-old who's made to do things. So child is very vulnerable. Second is the caregivers and the parents are also equally unaware. So many more children online, so much more they have to do, and everybody's struggling to just make the simple ends meet, that the child security online is actually falls little further in their agenda of what they have to cover. So that, and at the same time, parents and caregivers really don't know what exactly means safety online. They are said, okay, they'll tell the child don't be, they might catch them, they say don't be, but who knows? Every child has an account even before their age. Sometimes even the parents do it, thinking it's smarter to get their kids online, which is the biggest policy. Another thing is what the child is doing. Whom are they meeting? I know a lot of children are watching a lot of things on YouTube right now. So the exposure to a lot of material is something which the parent and the caregiver doesn't know. So for me, when I say, are you putting a big fat lock on your main gate? But what about the big fat lock on your internet in your house? Do you know how to do it? Do you know what you're supposed to do? Do you know your passwords? Does your child know? A lot of children are playing games online. Parents are being very smart. They say, oh, my child knows how to play all these games online. Who are they meeting in? Who are they meeting online? The social games, they have to have built teams. And perpetuators and predators come in all shapes and sizes. Yeah. They might come in a person who's 1 year older to you, 2 years older to you. It can be a female, it can be a male, it could be even another, any of the respective genders. So for us, it's all those layers which have to be systematically tackled now by every adult. This is the kind of world we are in. It's no more about catching hands and making them cross the road. That's not the way you're bringing up a child anymore. There are many more things. You are as public in your house, in your room, as you are outside your house.
Wow. Yeah. So before pre-pandemic, children were already the most vulnerable population because they have less access to resources to ask for help. There's so much stigma around this to even say that I have fallen into this trap. There's so much, so many complications that prevent reporting, that prevent this crime from coming out into the light. And in India, there are a lot of myths around child sexual abuse as well. There's myths that it cures AIDS or that it's safe because children are not exposed to STDs. So there's all of this already in place. So what the pandemic has added or what has happened with digitization is mass digitization without parallel awareness about digital safety. And that's been like a cocktail of horrors. And the stories are sort of just starting to surface. If we don't stem it at this point, there's going to be a lot worse in the future. Sudha ma'am, I want to turn it over to you to ask you about why are children the most vulnerable group in, you run the Safe Village program, and there the risks are probably a little different from the digital risk of being exploited for the digital risk. So could you tell us a little bit about the disruption in education, school closures, how have those things actually impacted what you're seeing in the villages?
Yeah, the school closures led to a lot of children being online and because of lack of awareness, and that we see both in the physical form, the physical programs, as well as the online, and now in the COVID pandemic, we see that lack of awareness is the major cause. Children don't know how to protect themselves, and they easily believe whoever befriends them on various social media, Like Leena mentioned, children are onto video games, and we had a case where we intervened and we rescued a 16-year-old girl. When she was trying to go away from Hyderabad to Lucknow, she doesn't even know where she was going to. She met the boy online. The boy was supposedly 16 or 17-year-old, same age as she. She just cleared her 10th exams. And she says, I want to build a new life with him. Yeah, she is that, unaware of the risk of young girl traveling alone. And when we asked her, do you know his address? What contact details do you have? She says, I don't know anything except that I know I can contact him on Facebook. So she plans to go to Lucknow, rent a home. I don't know how she will do it, but rent a home, take a phone, purchase a phone, contact him on Facebook. This is entire thing is so vulnerable situation. She could have been apprehended
At
anywhere.
any point.
Lucky for her and her family, and that we were able to, our team was able to find the child there. And this is, and she didn't even understand the magnitude of the step that she has taken. And another case I want to narrate is about a young parent around 22 years old. She had a child of 3-year-old who was playing video games on the mobile. And when she came from the kitchen, she saw that there was pornographic cartoons running on her phone. And she was shocked about what happened. And later, if we try to evaluate, it's not because child was able to see something or she tried to open anything. It is because parents would have, or someone using the phone would have accessed pornographic material, and that would have popped up as an advertisement. So lack of awareness even within the parents about how to restrict usage of such content, because it's important to protect the younger generation too. So there are many factors that are impacting this.
Absolutely. And at the start of the pandemic, there was a whole host of issues that increased the vulnerability of already vulnerable communities. There was sudden job loss, there was mass exodus, reverse migration. And Rosanna, ma'am, if you could speak into this, how did you see this increasing the vulnerability of children in the 8 states that you all work in? The lack of jobs, the sudden rise in unemployment, and this reverse migration back into rural areas without necessarily employment being available there. Did you see this impacting casework in any way? What are some observations that you have?
What we've seen is during the pandemic, when the country was at its peak with the rise of COVID cases, cross-border trafficking, as well as the migration of people, the immigration of people from another states, so the states that where they have left from, let's say, from northeast to other states of the country, and they came back. So during that time, we have seen economic instability among the people and loss of job, and this has in fact affected them a lot, and the young girls and boys have turned to social media platform and internet looking for jobs. And during that time, what we have seen is a lot of unregulated job placement agencies which comes online, floating in the country as well as in the northeast. They just floated, and these young people have started applying for jobs and things like that. Some way or the other, they get lured into this, they fall prey into this, and somehow they get trafficked again. So this is one thing which we have seen. And over the years, we, of course, from before, we have seen that unregistered placement agencies play a very important role in transporting young people to other countries. So during the pandemic, this has happened. So we have seen this migration also became a major issue in this way. And countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal were more vulnerable. In recent times, we have seen the rise of displaced people from Myanmar owing to the turmoil in the country. People from Myanmar, migrated to the border states of northeast eastern region of India. This have added vulnerability to the displaced people. Some states of northeast region of India have not recognized the existence of these displaced people. no data are available to counter the situation of these people, hence giving rise to their vulnerability to being trafficked. So this is one thing which we have seen. So,
Yes.
but
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. This is where I'm going to next is open for anyone to take up. In addition to all of these things that happened, the education disruption, school closures, reverse migration, job loss, there were also several national disasters that happened, natural disasters rather. There was Cyclone Amphan in touching West Bengal. There were cyclones in Maharashtra. All of this came over and above a sudden season of struggle. How did this make children even more vulnerable? Is this something that you saw in your casework? Did you have any examples of this coming up?
So what we saw in Sundarbans, like everybody's already spoken about the rise in child marriage. I think because the girls, especially out of schools, the parents were more hurried to get them married. And those agencies, civic agencies are moving in to prevent it, it's becoming more and more difficult. Another thing which has really been saddening is the rise of teenage pregnancies. So you have these 15-year-old girls who become mothers now after a year and a half in pandemic. And you see so many of them walking into a clinic. So now what happens is we cannot negate the fact that they need the help. So the moment the government issues the mother card to them, they're actually in a way supporting them. My ground team has been struggling, like it's a struggle, because then how do you explain to the other parents who are saying, you all are telling us that not to get our child married, but at the same time, if there is a 15-year-old girl who gets pregnant, she's helped by the government. It's such a big issue. You have to help them, yet at the same time. So that's one fact. I'm leaving it open here for all the other agencies. Like, how can we all collaborate to really give a kind of a blueprint for the government also, because it's a new situation for everybody. It's not black and white anymore. That's been a new struggle for us under Amphan. Other than the fact that, of course, the national disaster needed all the funds, and we also got a lot of help to give relief to all our villages where we work, to make sure that no house went to sleep hungry, because hunger is what really drives vulnerability. That's my input and my take on what happened.
Sure. Sudha ma'am, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, Leena perfectly said that, they're so vulnerable because of the loss of employment. Yeah, there's no, food is the primary need of any person. And we can't blame parents also for child marriages. So because children are away from school, they're accessing online, like all the social media online, and they're speaking to many of their, other gender. And parents are very worried that they might elope, and they worry about their family honor. So it's a vicious cycle. Children alone without any security, like, supervision, and parents worried that they might elope. So that's leading to increase in child marriage cases. And because the children are already unaware, there is a rise in eloping cases too. And yes, we need to create awareness to the entire population, not just to the children.
Right, right. I actually just want to take off from what both Sudha ma'am and Leena ma'am said about hunger is the ultimate need, and people will do anything to meet that need. But do you think that resources to fight trafficking have also, in a sense, in the last 1.5 years, been diverted towards largely COVID relief, and therefore the vigilance or the resources that were available in terms of helplines or in terms of rescues or rehabilitation has been less in the last 1.5 years? So maybe that also probably increased the vulnerability of children, that there was maybe less policing because there were so many resources being diverted to just manage COVID. Is this something that you have observed?
Sure, I can go first.
Sure.
The police resources that are diverted definitely would contribute to the increase in trafficking. But again, because primary need is hunger, satiating the hunger, it is important to divert funds for this primary need also.
Yes.
So maybe we have to look at other means of how we can sustain the support system that's already available to the kids, the pre-COVID. That would have been the first step that would have taken, and especially the schools. because of closure of schools, the children miss the basic support system. Yeah, but diverting resources to food was an important thing. And like Leena mentioned, even we had good supporters, and we have been able to support families who were, without lack of earning opportunities. You could say. Yeah.
And I would say because of COVID, actually there's a scare also, right? Personal healthcare scare. So it was difficult for a lot of people to step out of their immediate area, which was their security, to make sure that they were COVID safe. And I think traffickers, though in the beginning there was this whole report about trafficking having dropped, though we were all kind of little wondering what happened, like, has it really, because it's very difficult to map it. I mean, it was like within 3 months into COVID, and there was this report that COVID has dropped, and I mean, trafficking has dropped, human trafficking has dropped. So we could say, okay, very good, but we have to wait and watch.
Yeah, and the reports coming after that have said like the good of the last 20 years is probably undone in this time. I don't
Even
know
at
if that's, yeah.
child sexual abuse material, that's the new scare which has developed under COVID.
Right, right. Sudha ma'am, were you going to add something?
Yeah, exploitation has taken a different form now. It's moved online.
Yeah. You've led me straight into the third section. Sorry, I think I cut you off again. Sudha ma'am, you want to go ahead?
Not an issue. No, please go ahead.
Sure. So basically, the third section talks about, I would like us to discuss the ways in which the perpetrator actually reaches or contacts a potential victim. There's largely so much myth around this, especially because of popular culture. You think of the perpetrator as, or even the trafficker, as a stranger or somebody who comes to kidnap kids. There's so much drama and la-di-da around this that the actual truth becomes quite hard to believe. So I want to ask all three organizations, what does the trafficker today actually look like? What are some of the lures or the methods that he uses to actually reach a potential victim? And I'm sure that looks completely different online and offline. So if we can all talk about both of those so that people kind of bust that myth of this trafficker as like the Bollywood gangster who comes to kidnap kids. Any of you can start. Sure, Leena ma'am, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Rosanna ma'am, go ahead.
Rosanna, right.
Yeah, okay. So during this this pandemic time, which we have seen is that many people have died. The parents have died, and also the children are left orphaned, and parents being succumbing to COVID. So perpetrators, so to say, like many people started sharing information about children, about children who have lost their parents, relatives, through social media platform like Facebook and all. So then you see a lot of that, on WhatsApp and all. So thinking that by spreading information, they would be helping, but instead they have made the children vulnerable to traffickers. Traffickers are just eyeing and when to get these children. So so most of the time, traffickers in the guise of childless couples do come and take the children away and sell them off. It's in such a matter, Child Welfare Committee has also intervened in a lot of cases here. In one of the cases that we recently dealt with, there's this girl who was pregnant, and when she came back, she was brought back. She was trafficked. She was brought back, but somehow or the other, she died during COVID time, and her child was, people started coming to buy her child, and they even the relatives offered money. So this is something which is there, which is happening. It's very important that the state, as well as people, should make aware of the existence of the Central Adoption Resource Authority, like the CARA, which is the overall authority for adoption in the country. So these are the things that is there, which is, I feel, it's very important for us, even for individuals, to understand what the law has in place in a country, and what the authorities are there in the country to help. Because during the pandemic, a lot of traffickers, a lot of forget about traffickers, other people also who are looking at children to exploit them, like the recent cases in Assam, where a young child was taken and was used for videography, pornographic videos. Some foreign nationals were there who had come, and then they were videographing the whole thing. So it is kind of scary situation. So awareness has to be created in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rosanna, ma'am.
I was saying, see, today predators and perpetuators, like the predators online, we spoke about in the gaming space. We spoke about people befriending children online. We spoke about, then there is a whole thing about social media, grooming which goes on. A lot of children today are already groomed because society is grooming them in a certain way to look, feel, behave in a certain way. So today there have been cases where traffickers have actually said, we barely have to do any grooming. Society is already grooming the kids. Because another thing which I think we are not realizing is we all really have to address in our education system is adolescent sexuality. We are not addressing the fact that adolescents are becoming more sexual because of all what they're exposed to.
Yeah.
And if we want to still curb that, not talk about it, we are not giving them a vent for their self-identity. And then they seek that in any other person online who might be trying to befriend them because they are more vulnerable. So there's whole thing about, the people actually perpetuators might be actually predators might be stalking you for a good 6 months before they start reaching out to you.
Yeah.
And they might know everything about you. They see what you said 2 years back. Suppose 1 year back you said, oh, I'd love to sing. Suddenly you'll have a new friend who'll say, oh, you have a beautiful voice. That person has hit a soft nerve with you, and you automatically like that person. And then though you might say, oh, I'm not befriending anybody where I don't have a common friend. But suppose your friend has already befriended a stranger and you see one common friend and you might press the button. Okay. So these are the kind of things which have to become part of an education system very, very systematically. There have to be more checks, balances. Parents, caregivers have to know their roles. There have to be proper counselors, safe people who children should be able to speak with regularly. These are regular conversations which everybody have to have with children. And of course, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Sudha, I'm sure you can add more.
Go ahead.
Just want to add, traffickers always look for vulnerabilities. Yeah, and it takes them long time to identify a victim, probably 6 months or so, like you mentioned. Yes, but they are on prowl. So especially on social media, if now all youngsters that are watching, one message to you: don't answer any messages that come late in night, because this is one vulnerable factor that traffickers look out for. If you're answering a message on social media at around 2 a.m., that means you clearly indicate that you're feeling lonely or you need some sort of a companion that you need to talk to. So these are kind of issues that need to be spoken with all the young children. They need to be aware about these things and how they can switch off the locations in their photographs when they put up on social media, so that perpetrators can't trace or not use their own photographs in abusive material content also.
Blackmail.
Yes, yeah. And traffickers, they have changed, like you say, they've become nameless and faceless, you can say, right? They're online. And if you look at the Palermo Protocol, the definition of trafficking, the act, means, and purpose. Now, everything is online. The action is online. The means is also online. Exploitation is happening online. And you don't even know who the exploiter is. Yeah, you can't even trace. It's difficult for the law enforcement officials also to trace the trafficker or the exploiter, because the data is not within our country, and even you don't know how to complain. Even if you know how to complain, it takes ages for them to analyze the data.
Yeah.
The data is encrypted. So the complications have risen a lot in lot of great proportions.
Yeah.
Yep. And one more thing, that the mental issues of the victims. So there was a case that was reported. The victims were not able to identify themselves as victim.
Okay.
So they were befriended on Facebook and they were trafficked, exploited, in the guise of, marriage proposal. The girl fled from the home. She was rescued and brought into the home, but she had a lot of difficulty. She took more than 6 months to understand that she was not alone, that the same guy has also befriended multiple other girls and lured them. This is another aspect we have to look into,
Yeah.
the mental health issues.
The brainwashing was that deep in that case. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Somewhere the girl feels that she is also part of the plan and that she is not a victim herself.
Correct. Leena ma'am, I think you were saying something, but you're on mute.
No, I'm saying grooming actually goes very deep psychologically.
Yeah.
They start feeling as if, first thing, they don't come to know that they have become trafficked.
A victim.
Because when it happens with friends and all, you might do something for a friend, sometimes voluntarily.
Yeah.
Then slowly you might be coerced into it, and you still think, oh, it's my friend and I'm just coerced into it. Then you might do it for a friend's friend, and still you feel you're doing it for somebody of your own choice.
Correct.
So sometimes up till a very, very extreme point, you don't even realize that you are actually being trafficked. And like Sudha said, they are faceless, and they can actually be of any age. They could be of any gender. They can actually be your own gender. And we've seen cases, other than the fact that how Rosanna spoke about somebody coming back to the village and taking more people. We have a whole village in Sundarbans who've seen a whole mass exodus because somebody came back from the red light and lured each one of them back there, saying about the money which they're going to receive. And they all thought they were going for a decent profession. And we've had a case where one of them said, I went, but my brother wanted to come and check my place of work to see if it's fine. It totally horrifies us to think that people are still thinking it because that's what they know. That's the only thing they know. And the same way now, even the younger children, if they are not made aware, they won't even realize that there are certain things which are happening in the social media, in their rooms, in their laptops, which is actually not all right.
Correct.
And which is actually, it's trafficking, and it's their coercion, and they should know about all this, and it happens with peers.
Exactly. Since we're talking about what the trafficker looks like offline as well, especially with the example of the Sundarbans, there's a lot of data that says the trafficker is never a stranger, very rarely a stranger. So it could be somebody who's better known in the village or somebody who's like a uncle twice removed. Is that something that you're seeing that's increasing now, especially with the economic vulnerability, job promises for children, especially teenage girls? Is that something that's on the ground as well?
That is always there. But of course, child marriage is, I think, the new vulnerable space, which is really going to be becoming the next route for increasing the vulnerability. Elopement, not addressing child sexuality. It's going to be somebody they've fallen in love. We've spoken about all this. So it's going to come in all these different forms.
Right.
For me. Sudha, you can add something to that.
Yeah, the lover boy trafficker, that's the common mode that we are seeing now. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much to all of you for talking about this. And like we said at the start, the trafficker is not a stranger. He, she usually comes in known forms, and it's good to talk about these processes of hunting and grooming. And these are kind of terms that always felt like, okay, maybe this happens in some first world country, but it is most definitely happening here among our neighbors in our own communities across rural and urban areas. And the more aware, the more awakened we are as a community, the better we can stop this crime. So in the last 1.5 years, I'm sure all of you as organizations have had to pivot your responses, pivot your programs to meet the new kind of need. So if we can just go organization by organization to talk about some of the initiatives that you are doing on the ground to meet the needs that we've discussed this evening, and we can close with that. So Sudha ma'am, would you want to start, and then we can go one by one?
Sure. We have pivoted. The first thing that we did was providing relief supplies to the vulnerable family in the areas of our operation. And in addition to that, we understood that traffickers haven't altered. They have moved online. So we had to find also ways to continue the awareness campaigns. And we have used our social media to the fullest. We have been trying to spread awareness through that. And we've also created digital learning modules. Because again, it's important to reach the needy immediately. The third thing that we did was conduct community radio programs. So we saw that the reach of community radio is very good, especially at the grassroots level. And this community radios talk about the issues that are very relevant to the local population. So they have a large viewership, listenership, and we have utilized that in all our states. And that has really built a great, awareness. And that also led to a lot of traffic to our helpline. And we've seen people approaching us saying that, okay, I'm going to get married in 2 days. Can you please help me stop it? So that's kind of empowerment we are looking at. The girl herself coming ahead and requesting support for that.
So good to hear. So good to hear. Rosanna ma'am, would you want to go next?
Yeah, we have done a lot of relief programs. One of the programs that we have done, and on top of that, we have used digital platform to create awareness through our partners all over the northeastern states as well as the other countries that we are working with. And these are the things that we have been using, asking young people, our volunteers, to create awareness through the digital platform. So this thing which we have been doing. So I think it's very important for everyone to understand that, traffickers no longer come physically. They use digital media platform to lure people. So it's very important for them to understand. So this is what we have been doing. So we have been having trainings, and we have been having awareness programs to our partner organizations in different states. So it's an ongoing thing. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Rosanna ma'am. Leena ma'am, over to you.
So same ditto relief work, of course, has been going strong. And our main work has been, of course, online and offline. Our Sundarbans project actually something, because of all the children suddenly going off school, we had a youth program which we had started just before COVID struck. And suddenly they all started reaching out to us more, because under the COVID thing of distancing, and we did a whole COVID awareness workshop with these children. We've actually managed to really increase our youth program there and creating awareness systematically, because we wanted to give the discussion of safety in the hand of the youth themselves. So just like Sudha said, stopping of child marriages has become a major action given for this youth group. They are constantly reporting stopping child marriages. Other than fact, all the other COVID relief, of course, they helped us a lot with. But now what we have developed is a school and awareness and safety school program. Because like we were saying, our motto is, why wait for a girl to get trafficked to save her? Everybody, we have a lot of rescue, we have a lot of rehabilitation going. But missing the way it started with me, it was like I was always talking about prevention. So we have slowly steadfastly worked with that. We've been doing awareness for children now for the last 3 years. We've developed that school program under COVID. It's really an intensive, and we've had an amazing pilots which we've run through schools now. And it's a collaboration amongst a lot of stakeholders and learnings. So we've now Bengali version now going out in Bengal, and Hindi version going out, and English. We're reaching out to children in all different tier cities, not only the top tier, tier 2, tier 3, and in vernacular. So that we want the awareness to be very systematic.
Yes.
Because we can't say, इस साल इस बच्चे को सिखा दिया ये स्कूल में, तो next साल अच्छा ये स्कूल छोड़ देते हैं, let's go to the other school. Yeah. It's not. It has to be something where every adolescent has to really get this, like any other systematic understanding of safety, like or of any other learning which people get for a multiplication or a division. Just like that, child safety, your own safety, digital safety is something which we are really setting out to do systematically.
Awesome. So good to hear. To those of you who are watching, in the comments of this live, we've put down resources to all three organizations, and you can find their digital resources on their websites. I'm just going to use the last 10 minutes to address a few questions that have come on the Facebook Live. So any of you can feel free to take this. Soma Das is asking, is overpopulation responsible for a rise in commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of children, because this often leads to limited resources and therefore limited jobs. So should awareness of family planning be promoted and the population be controlled as a means to reduce trafficking?
I could take that.
Sure. Lena ma'am
Okay,
first and then
Sudha, why don't you take it?
Please go ahead.
Overpopulation will give us an increase in figures, definitely. It will seem like, okay, the figures are increasing, but they are increasing. And I think civic society has definitely improved. So it's not like some resources are not going there what they're supposed to go. I think the government and everybody is now really becoming more systematic on that. So I don't think that's the thing. And other than parents about population, there has to be a basic education to parents about digital safety, which has to be given to every parent. That's my take on it. So that you can add.
Sure.
Yeah. Many factors contribute to trafficking. It's not just large family. Like you mentioned, it's a large population means larger number of exploited victims, etc. But what we need to do, bring about a behavioral change in the community. That is more important. Reduce the demand on one side and make it, very clear that exploitation is not right. If you're able to bring that, awareness there within the community, then we'll be able to better control this issue of trafficking.
Sure. Rosanna ma'am, anything you want to add, or should we?
I agree with Sudha because, overpopulation is not the reason for trafficking, but the thing is we need to make people aware that, they have to be safe in every aspect. So.
Right. Sure. Yeah. The more the number of people, the more the need for awareness, definitely. And awareness is probably a bigger solution to the problem than restricting population. There's one other question which says, will mandatory higher education, I'm rephrasing this a little bit, but it says, will mandatory higher education, at least to the diploma level or the degree level, actually reduce trafficking of children? So the question says, even if they are married, can the government or the community at least mandate a diploma level or degree level of education to help reduce trafficking? Do you feel that this would help in any way?
I didn't understand. How will a diploma or a degree level education?
So compulsory education beyond up to class 12. So ensuring that everybody, just like how basic primary education and secondary education is compulsory, mandated by the government, making that mandate extend all the way to college and degree to reduce child marriages, I'm guessing, is what's unwritten here.
I'll take this up.
Sure.
So knowledge, education is very different from awareness or knowledge. Yeah. So making it mandatory for diploma or college education might not really be impactful. What will be impactful is maybe if they make it mandatory, the child can be in school or college for some more years, and that will prevent child marriages. That can be one way out of this. But awareness is knowledge that can be done even in schools. It has to start from schools, not just in colleges.
Yeah, at any level.
Academics don't have a relation to this. It's about awareness. Another thing is, I think our government has also increased the child marriage age, the marriage age, right?
Yeah.
So another issue which we are facing with adolescent sexuality. So that's another goal.
Yeah. So somebody has asked, will the video be available online for viewing? Yes, it will. It will be saved on Facebook right here where you're watching it, and we will add it to YouTube as well. All of the participant organizations will be sharing these links, so you can refer to it later. Somebody else says, thank you so much for this session. Okay, one more person saying thank you so much for this session. We really need to make sure that we build a better and a safer space for every child. Yeah, we couldn't agree more. I think you closed this better than I could have. So what I want to say to everybody watching is this is just the first of a bunch of events that are going to happen through this week. On Friday, we are hosting an Instagram live that will talk specifically about the citizens' role in prevention. How can you, if you suspect trafficking, what can you do? If you do report it to someone, what are your obligations? What will happen to you? Will you be named? Will the child's privacy be protected? A lot of these FAQs that kind of prevent us from actually raising our voice about this. We're going to be talking about this on Instagram this Friday. Through this week, there are 2 Twitter chats that are happening. The first is actually happening tomorrow to bring more conceptual clarity around the issue of commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking of children. And the second Twitter chat that's happening on Thursday is again going to look at citizens' role in prevention. So there's a lot of conversation happening around this on different platforms through all 10 participating organizations. How can you stay in touch? The hashtag to follow is United for Child Safety. That's just spelled the usual way. There are no letters missing. So it's United for Child Safety, and this is the hashtag on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So do stay in touch and do check out all of the material that these organizations are putting out on their social media. There's some amazing material that's coming out in very understandable, easy to process language. The jargon has all been taken out so that you and I, ordinary people, can actually do something about this issue. So before we close, I want to thank all three of you panelists for this conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that people listening have learned a lot as well. More than that, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I know it's felt like an upward battle this year, but because you are there to fight against this, it's not an unabated evil. And we respect each of you, and more power to you and your organization and the work that you do. Thank you for taking the time in the middle of the hundreds of things you're doing for this session, especially for answering the questions, sharing all of the stories. So grateful for you, and to everyone listening, thank you so much. This is really the first step. Awareness is really the first step. We appreciate you for taking this time and actually listening. An hour is not easy to come by these days. So thank you. Do share the video. Send it to your friends and family. Do share all the content that's coming out. The more of us that are aware, the better it is. Yeah, so there are a few more people in the comments saying thank you for this useful session. So I'm passing that on to you. That's all we have the time for. And have a good evening, everyone, and see you on the events to come.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.